There's one game series that has been going on for over a decade now, with multiple titles and stories to experience. However, within this group stands one game which is very unique and unlike any of the others. One where you can live out your childhood dreams of sailing the seas and jumping into hay bales. I'm talking about Assassin's Creed Black Flag, what I believe to be the best pirate game out there, apart from Puzzle Pirates released in 2003 of course. This is the game that took the well-known Assassin's Creed franchise that Ubisoft produced and put it into a completely different world, and added a new, exciting and surprisingly sad story to the franchise, and even included sea shanties, like, come on. Now, I would talk about how I remember when this game came out and I was so excited to play it, but I'd be lying because I was about 8 years old at the time, so nothing else really mattered apart from sweets and Minecraft parodies. Now I'm a lot older and sweets are no longer a priority. I can appreciate the beauty of this game. Black Flag begins in the year 1715, some would say the golden age of piracy, up there with the 2000s. We are put onto a ship in the Caribbean, currently battling during a stormy night. This is the first time that we see the main character of the game, Edward Kenway, a Welsh pirate with big ambitions. After destroying an enemy ship, a hooded man jumps aboard and has a stare down with Edward, right before the one that they are on also gets destroyed. We flash back to a conversation Edward has had with his girlfriend, Caroline, where she is asking him how long his trip will be, as Edward is about to embark on a journey as a pirate.
We don't need a fortune.
It's not about need, Caroline. I want food that don't make me sick. I want walls that hold back the wind. I want a decent life.
Edward explains what this trip could do for him and promises to be back soon.
A year, I reckon. 2 at the most.
He awakens back in the present and swims to the shore. Lying next to him is the hooded figure that was on board, who turns out to be a part of the assassins. He says he needs to get to Havana and offers Edward some money to help him. However, they couldn't come to an agreement and the assassin tries to escape.
I'm on to you, Snakesby!
We chase after him and eventually catch up and kill him. And on his body is a letter from the governor in Havana stating that if he possesses the information needed, then he will be rewarded handsomely, which sounds very appealing to Edward. Edward has the idea to disguise himself as the assassin, as his face is unknown and goes under the new name Duncan. We find a ship docked on the island, guarded by military who have captured a merchant and are keeping him from escaping. We eliminate them and rescue the hostage to finally stop him shouting the same bloody lines. We then acquaint ourselves with them, and the merchant's name is Steve Bonnet. It turns out Steve is also going to Havana, however the captain of his ship is killed, but luckily Edward, aka Duncan, is able to pilot it. Steve is cautious at first, but Edward lies and tells him that he is on a mission for the king and needs to get to Havana quickly.
You put me at ease, sir. To think I took you for a pirate when you first appeared. Did you?
The two then hop on board and set sail for Havana. This is when we awaken in the modern day in the headquarters of the company Abstergo, the company that we, the player, are an employee of. Abstergo are currently researching the memories of people within history. We have been tasked with investigating all of Edward's memories to be able to make a realistic game experience for the company to sell.
Edward, the pirate.
Yar, matey.
We are taken to our own desk and meet the janitor, who might play a role later, and then log back in to our Animus console. This is where we awaken in Havana, a bustling Spanish island with cats on it. Oh my god. But something tells me that they don't take kindly to pirates here. We head to the top of a tower to be able to synchronize and get the locations of all the places in the island. And then head back to Steve, who is currently being pickpocketed. And after catching and killing the pickpocketer, a bit brutal, we head into an open tavern where a drunk guy is looking at us and says he recognizes our face.
Oi! Skulk! I've seen your face before. You's mates with them pirates down in Nassau. Shut your f***ing gob or I'll fill it with shots.
He then refers to us as our real name Edward, not Duncan. So obviously we beat him to a pulp and then have to escape the guards. We head back to the ship and speak with Steve, and we find that his sugar has been stolen and the piece of information that we had that we were going to give to the governor. So now we need to follow some guards to find out where the captain is being located to be able to steal his key and get inside the lockup of this heavily guarded castle. Once inside, we very nearly get caught, but are able to go and retrieve what has been stolen from us. Unfortunately, Steve's sugar is left though. This is when Edward decides to let Steve know of his real name.
Hey, our bonnet. The name's Edward, in truth. Duncan's only a handle.
And finally go and meet with the governor about the letter he sent Duncan. When we head to his estate, we are greeted by some of his partners, one of who is Mr. Rogers, and the other is some cowboy-looking guy. The cowboy asks us where our hidden blades are, and then gives us a new pair, so now it really feels like a proper Assassin's Creed game. We demonstrate how to use them, beginner's luck, I guess. And once we proved ourselves, we eventually go and meet with Governor Torres and deliver what he wanted. The governor gives us a ring, which I hope he knows that Edward doesn't swing that way, and then tells us what the purpose of our delivery is. There's a hidden place called the Observatory, which is an ancient device that can be used to locate and spy on anyone, no matter how far away they are. A bit like mobile phones nowadays. However, the assassins are also after this device, and Duncan was actually betraying them by delivering this to the governor, who is part of the Templars.
Thanks to Duncan and the information he has delivered, the assassins won't be a problem for much longer.
The next morning, we meet with one of the partners by the docks, when Steve sees us and very nearly blows our cover.
Hello, Edward!
He just called you Edward.
Oh, that's the merchant who sailed me here. Out of caution, I gave him a false name.
Ah, well done.
We then go and meet the person who is supposedly a sage and has been taken prisoner by the Templars. The governor takes some of the sage's blood and then we escort them back to the prison. Unfortunately, we are attacked by assassins and the prisoner tries to escape, but we catch him and what looks like kill him. Oh, maybe not. The governor gives us our first payment for our services, but Edward is not happy with its value.
1,000 reals for those maps. That's what? £100 at most. How's a man supposed to become rich in these times with a miser like Torres running the world?
So instead, he decides to try and find the observatory for himself and sell it for a fortune and go back to England a rich man. To do this, we sneak into the governor's estate and into the sage's cage to go speak to him. However, we find that he is no longer there and are caught and taken to the docks as a prisoner.
What is your true name, rogue?
It's, Captain Pissoff.
We flash back to another memory of Edward's, where he is being berated by Caroline's father as he is unhappy with Edward's plans to leave for the other side of the world. Edward then talks again about his dreams to Caroline.
With 1,000 doubloons spilling from my pockets, like drops of rain, I can see it.
And then we come back to the present. Edward and another pirate are being held prisoner on a ship and manage to escape their chains, kill the guards, and make their way to the main deck. Edward and the other pirate devise a plan to rescue the other prisoners on the fleet of ships and then escape in one of them. However, they now have to make it through this monstrous storm, and is that a fucking tornado? Once they've done so, Edward decides to keep the ship and name it the Jackdaw, after a bird. Edward then introduces himself to the other prisoner, whose name is Adewale, and assigns him as quartermaster of the Jackdaw. They then set sail for an island called Nassau, one ruled by pirates and free from any law and order. Once on the island, we meet some of Edward's old friends, Edward Thatch, aka Blackbeard, and Ben Hornigold, and they help us find a crew for our new ship.
Jackdaw. You named your brig after a poxy bird.
And then we tell them our plans of trying to find the observatory.
Have you heard of a place called the Observatory?
Aye, it's an old legend, like El Dorado or the Fountain of Youth.
It's fairy stories you prefer to gold, is it?
It's worth more than gold, Thatch. 10,000 times above what we could pull off any Spanish ship.
The next morning we take one of our pirate friends for a ride on the ship.
Not a bad-looking tinderbox you got there.
You sound a bit green, Hornigold. Is it envy? Is mine bigger than yours?
And then go find some Spaniards to destroy and steal their materials to go and upgrade the Jackdaw. This is when they give us a black flag for our ship. Oh my god, that's the name of the game. After destroying some more Spanish ships, Adewale tells us of a plan to go steal sugarcane from a plantation on one of the islands. To do this, we find someone who knows of its whereabouts and go follow him to a giant ship, and then follow that ship straight to the island. That was pretty easy. Then after killing the guards and getting access to their storage, we steal all their sugarcane. However, this isn't enough for our greedy pirates, so we find the biggest, baddest ship we can and attempt to steal from it. Unfortunately, we're unable to do so on the seas. We follow it until it docks on one of the islands and we can sneak through to get on board. This is where we find one of the people working with the governor who we met during our meeting. We give him a friendly hello and then have a quick conversation before he dies.
I'm sorry about this, mate, but I can't risk you telling your Templar friends about me still kicking around.
I pity you, Buccaneer. After all you have seen, after all we showed you of our order, still you embrace the life of an ignorant and aimless rogue.
And then steal this necklace with a key on it from him. That's what he gets for being a cowboy in a pirate game. We then come back to the real world, where we meet with the CEO of Abstergo, and he tells us to focus on the memories that Edward has of finding the observatory. A short meeting, but at least we know how to get off emotion in the office. Not something I'd expect to say when talking about a pirate game. Then the janitor from before is in our ear somehow, and he makes us hack into one of our colleagues' computers to get access to some files that include documentation of some guy who touched something and burned his hand, and then died. Yeah, I'm not too sure either at this point. But we give the files to someone downstairs and then head back to our desk. Once back in our Animus, we get flashbacks to another one of Edward's old memories where Caroline is leaving Edward.
I'm sorry, Edward, but my father is right. You had a decent wage when you worked the farm. Why can you not be satisfied with that? With me?
Decent wage? That job was near as, damn it, to robbery. You want to be married to a peasant the whole of your life?
All right, Edward.
However, one of the pirates, James Kidd, wakes us from the lovely dream we're having and then makes us follow him through the jungle to some sort of puzzle. We then have to use our eagle vision to figure it out, which shows the location of some sort of artifact. Not actually sure what this is for, but at least we have it. We then head back to the docks and find that James is leaving.
All I know is you like dangerous prizes.
Like the observatory. I think you know more about that than you let on in Nassau.
You noticed that, did you?
This is when we ask him about the observatory, and James tells us to meet us somewhere in a few weeks' time, where he is going to show us something very mysterious. A few weeks later, Edward sets out for the island James talked about, and finds a place crawling with hooded figures, just like the guy we killed at the beginning of the game. And suddenly, some come behind us and ask us about the assassin Duncan.
What is the assassin Duncan Walpole? Dead and buried.
A little bit awkward. As he was a traitor, they aren't actually angry at us for killing him, but we did technically carry out his mission for him.
Should I find comfort in that? You murdered our brothers and sisters in Havana.
Oops. After the conversation, we make our way through this mysterious cave with James as he tells us he is part of the assassins and tells us about their moral code. Edward isn't interested in this, however, as his only aim in life is to make some serious bread. So we continue through the cave and eventually get to some puzzle and have to complete it by lining up the blocks. Pretty simple, really. And then these faces open up to a statue of the sage that we saw in Havana. Unfortunately for us, the island has been raided by the guards, aka the Templars, and now we have to save these hostages that have been taken. James gives us some blow darts to kill them with.
Take this. You'll attract no attention and take fewer lives.
Yeah, we'll see about that. These blow darts can either put enemies to sleep or make them go berserk. However, it looks like one should be called the shout and die blow dart.
Clear shot.
After saving the hostages, their leader forgives us for killing his assassin friends in Havana, but kicks us off the island.
I absolve you of your errors in Havana and elsewhere, but you are not welcome here.
Before we leave, however, James quickly tells us the rivalry that the Templars and assassins have.
And what is that? Your cause?
To be blunt, we kill people. Templars and their associates. Folks who'd like to control all the empires on Earth. Claiming it's in the name of peace and order.
We head back to Nassau and fast forward to the year 1717, where Edward is chilling in the bar when the two pirates Vane and Jack come and chat to him.
You're welcome to Nassau, gents. Everyone is that does their fair share.
Fair share? What is this, a fucking monastery?
Blackbeard also joins in on the three and talk about a fort which is currently holding loads of gold that the governor of Havana is coming to receive. Since a few years has passed since we last saw him, Edward thinks it's time to pay him a visit.
Governor Torres himself, eh? Sounds promising.
Welcome to Nassau.
We go and destroy the fort and storm inside, and then go and speak to the governor inside. He tells us why the gold is sitting here.
2 years ago, we offered a reward for the sage's recapture. Today, someone claims to have found him. This gold is his ransom.
And also tells us where to find the person who has the sage, an island called Kingston. We then plan to use the governor to help capture the sage, and the black flag has risen on the fort. After all this, we then set sail for Kingston. When on the island, we speak to Adewale and explain the plan to him.
Torres meets with Prince, carrying a portion of the ransom, saying the rest is close behind. When we see the sage, you bring in the rest of the gold, make the swap, and get out.
However, a familiar face is nearby, and it turns out James Kidd is here to try and kill both of the people that we are tracking. Luckily, we persuade him to hold off until we can speak to both of them and start tailing the governor and the slave owner to his estate. However, when eavesdropping on their conversation, the slave owner knows that we are following him and runs off, leaving some guards for us to fight. James then runs off to go kill him, but we catch up again and manage to persuade him to wait a little bit longer.
I've been stalking that pig for a week now, charting his moves, and here I find not one but two of my targets, and you rob me of both.
Patience, man.
We head back to the estate at night time and meet up with James, who actually turns out to be a girl.
Your name's not James, is it?
To be honest, I kind of saw this coming based off the sound of their voice.
Come on.
We go and disable the alarms in the estate, which allows us to get through to the main house with the help of the female James. and this allows us to go and find and kill the slave owner. When heading back, we actually find the sage. However, he is holding James hostage, not the way we wanted this to go down. James manages to get free, but the sage shoots one of the bells nearby, and guards swarm the garden, so we have to make a swift exit. We meet back up with James, and she tells us her real name,
Mary Reed to my mum,
and makes us swear that we won't tell anyone. We come back to Nassau after some time has passed. We overhear Blackbeard and Hornigold talking about a pardon that is in place set by the English for any pirates.
Walk with us, Kenway. There's trouble brewing.
But before we can focus on that, we need to go and get some medicine, as there is an illness that is currently plaguing the island. We head to the sunken shipwreck and find a few bottles and manage to get back to the ship after nearly getting eaten by sharks. However, it turns out the bottles are spoiled, so we continue the search. We find Hornigold preparing a ship and ask him what has happened. It turned out Blackbeard decided to attack a massive man-of-war ship in the search for medicine.
It were Blackbeard who struck first. Opened fire on a British man-of-war, the pillock.
So now we have to go find and rescue him before his ship gets demolished. We find the man-of-war docked on an island and have to defend Blackbeard whilst also destroying the ship. Once it is destroyed, we find some medicine on board, but not enough to cure the island, so Blackbeard tells us to meet him in Charlestown in a month's time.
Hello? Are we victorious? I fear I am not built for the fatigue and care required to live as a man of fortune.
Oh yeah, Steve Bonnet is here as well. It looks like he's joined Blackbeard's crew.
Edward! Your constant friendship has been my most treasured find on these seas.
A month passes and we meet with Blackbeard, who currently has some hostages with him. He's pissed off because he sent a crew to go barter with the guards on the island, but have not heard back from them in a week.
6 days of pure fucking silence.
So Edward says he'll go and sort it out like the responsible pirate parent he is, and sneakily follow the ship through tight swampland and eventually find the captain. Of course we kill him for not responding to Blackbeard and then take all the medicine for Nassau. This is when Blackbeard tells us that he's wanting to retire soon before leaving us. We come back to Edward and see him standing with Jack, watching the British army visit the island, asking for Hornigold.
Come forth, if you please. Hear about the king's pardon, I reckon.
One of the people visiting is Mr. Rogers, one of the people we met in Havana, and who also knows of Edward's wrongdoing. We follow them to the fort on the island and steal the plans that they have, right before nearly getting caught by all of them. But this allows us to get a quick glimpse of their conversation.
And as soon as your hearts allow. For until such time, all of you will be confined in Nassau.
Rogers is playing the nice guy with these pirates, but the commandor who is with him isn't so nice and threatens Nassau if they don't take the pardon. It seems like most of the pirates do not agree with Hornigold, and Vane speaks his mind.
I'll be hanged before I surrender to that bobby.
Later in the day, we meet with Vane and devise a plan to blow up the blockade that the British have made with a ship full of gunpowder.
Right. You get the gunpowder, I'll secure the pine pitch.
To do this, we use the plans we stole to find out where the ships will be, and then sneak around the island to find some gunpowder kegs to use. As we are creating explosives, we overhear one of the lieutenants ordering the guards to tell the commandor to destroy any pirates that are in the sea. Understandably, Edward says he'll kill him before he can do anything.
Alright, I'll kill him.
But the person we are with doesn't like this idea, so of course, we take care of him as well. We sneak onto the giant military boat and kill the commandor, and before he dies, he tells us what he really wants to do is kill all the pirates, but Rogers is getting in the way of him doing so.
Your parasites feeding off the industry of honest men.
So he's a bit of a prick, to be honest. We wait until the night and find Vane setting up the explosives, whilst Jack decides it's a good idea to light a cigarette.
You'd raise a cloud here, louts.
And then we set sail and protect the fire ship so it can destroy the boats, and once it has done so, we can leave the island and be free from the guards on it. We wake up on an island called Great Inagor by James, aka Mary, also with a woman laying on top of us. Edward, you dirty dog. But instead of having a nice chat, she criticises our ways of living.
For Christ's sake, Edward. Don't anything but the stink of riches wrinkle your nose.
And after enjoying ourselves, we head off to find Vane and Blackbeard on one of the islands. They are arguing because Blackbeard has decided to retire, which makes Vane very angry. But before he officially retires, he tells us something he heard about the sage we are looking for.
Taking a prize a month back, I heard a man named Roberts was working a slave ship called the Princess. Might want to see about it.
During the retirement party, we find an odd-looking guy who runs off after looking at us. We follow him to a remote area of the island where he is talking to some guards, and then someone sets off a firework as some sort of signal right before...
What the devil?
We make it back to the dock, and luckily the Jackdaw and Blackbeard are okay, but we're all really pissed off, so chase after the British man-of-war, and after a battle on the sea, we board it and try and take control. All seems to be going well before Blackbeard gets heavily injured and eventually killed. This of course makes Edward lose focus, and someone comes to shove him off the boat, leaving him no choice but to flee. Some time passes, and Edward decides to go after the ship that Blackbeard spoke about that had the sage on it. We also get Vane to help us and look out for ships belonging to the Royal African Company. After many attempts and a long battle, we board the ship and take control. But the sage is not on board. And to really rub it in, Jack decides to take control of the ship for himself and leaves us sinking in the ocean.
I'll tear out your organs and string your bloody loot with them! Stop your goddamn howling, Vane!
We wake up on an island similar to the one we started on, and Vane has sneaked up on Edward to steal his food. It seems like some time on the island has made him go insane, and he tries to kill us, even though we just wanted to talk to him. After a tedious chase for the jungle and nearly getting killed twice by animals, we are left with no choice but to kill Vane. I mean, it serves him right for stealing our oysters.
Is this my reward for believing the best about men? For thinking that a bilge rat like you could muster up some fucking sense once in a while? Don't save me a spot in hell, Shanka. I ain't coming soon.
We head back to the Great Inagor and find that Jack is back here and didn't last very long with the ship by himself. Mary tries to convince Edward to join the assassins in fighting the sage, but he refuses and wants to carry out the journey by himself. We head back to Kingston and speak to a man who works for the Royal African Company, and he tells us that the ship that the sage is actually on has been away for a few weeks, so should be returning to the dock soon. But he also tells us that some other men have been asking about the ship and perfectly describes Horn of Gold and Mr. Rogers.
What other men?
Hottie sailor in plain rags, and a gent with a scar just here.
But luckily, they are staying just around the corner, so we can pay them a visit. We find them and tail them to the docks, and eventually see them meeting up with Governor Torres. We are sneakily eavesdropping on their conversation, and hear that the sage has been taken to Africa when Horn of Gold notices Edward's ship and calls us out.
Edward, can wait!
Edward then has a standoff with Horn of Gold, but loads of guards come and swarm the place, so we have to escape back to the ship and then set sail for Africa. Quite a long journey, I'd expect. Luckily, the game skips most of it, and we arrive there in no time. We get to the island with the sage on, but of course it's swarming with guards again. Eventually though, we come across a body somewhere, and behind us appears the sage.
Yet another dire situation, Roberts. We really must stop meeting like this.
We tell him we're here to get him away from the island, but he says that there are two captains that wouldn't let that happen. So we need to go kill them. Not the easiest job, as they're guarded by a bunch of guards. We then come back to the beach and see the sage in some new gear, speaking to his crew. A few months pass, and the year is now 1719, and we see Edward and the sage drinking on the beach. They yap on about what they think of creeds and ways of living.
What is the appeal of a creed if it does not yoke all men to like behaviour?
Before the sage stops teasing us and finally tells us to head to a specific location. Is this the observatory? No, it's just an island with some Portuguese ships. But apparently, there is a very valuable treasure needed for the observatory on board. What treasure, you ask? Well, it's the blood of all the Templars, which we can use to spy on them once we eventually get to the observatory, which the sage says he will finally take us to. But when we meet back up with him, it turns out we were followed by Horn of Gold, so we chase him to an island and creatively use one of the berserk darts on the guards to kill him for us. Horn of Gold criticises Edward's ways, and this is quite a sad encounter for these two, as they used to be good friends.
What have you done since Nassau fell, huh? Nothing but murder and mayhem. You threw in with the very kind we once hated!
However, the deed is done, and it's time to go meet up with the sage at the observatory. When on the island, we notice something weird stalking us, and it turns out the island is protected by some native people who have some very creepy displays for us. They also take a page out of Edward's book and hide in the bushes, but this won't help them against bullets. Once we've taken care of them and cleared a path, we finally reach the observatory. When we are in the entrance, the sage actually kills the crew that was with him, which of course startles Edward.
Jesus, Roberts! Have you gone mad?
We make our way through the ancient tomb and find the device used to spy on people. The security measures kick in, but luckily the sage knows how to stop it. We then go and spy on a few people to see how the observatory actually works. Edward claims the device is sorcery, but the sage promises it is all due to ancient technology, right before kicking Edward off the edge, leaving him for dead. Luckily, Edward is a parkour master and makes his way back to the boat, but stupidly gets stabbed by a bloody bush on the way down. We reach the crew and the sage is waiting for us, but instead of finishing us off, he takes us to be trialed and put in prison.
Have you ever seen the inside of a Jamaican prison, boy? Have you?
This is when we awaken back in the real world and find ourselves locked in a room. Because of all the security breaches that have gone on, Abstergo has been put on lockdown. But luckily, the mysterious guy talking to us and somehow gets us free and makes us go into the server room, which looks right out of a spaceship. Once we've hacked in to the server room, a holographic woman appears and says that we are supposed to fill our purpose and that the guy who burnt his hand has saved us all. She then says that she can't have a human vessel yet, and it turns out the guy talking to us actually tried to turn us into the vessel for her, but she didn't accept it, which makes him very angry. Not gonna lie, this really confused me when I was playing. Nonetheless, we head back to our pod and awaken at the trial of Mary and Anne Bonny. They are both sentenced to death, but claim that they are pregnant, meaning that their executions are delayed. We skip forward a few months to Edward being caged up when someone comes to help us out. It turns out to be one of the assassins and asks for help saving Mary.
But if you would lend me your aid, I can promise you safe passage from this place.
I'll need weapons.
We make our way into the prison where they are being kept and even see more familiar faces.
Hello, babe.
We reach Mary and Anne's cell and we find that Mary has given birth but has fallen ill, and Anne is also close to giving birth. We try and help Mary out of the cell, but she cannot walk and asks us to stop. We sit her down and she asks us to leave her here and save ourselves as the guards are coming.
Don't die on my account.
We try and convince her to come, but her head falls back and she slowly passes away. We take her body with us and leave the island. Before going, the assassin gives us back our robes and blades, even though he thinks we are not deserving of them. We wake up in a bar, and it doesn't look like Edward is taking the loss very well. Suddenly, the sage appears and flaunts the observatory device. This is when we get a really trippy scene where we are crawling towards the sage as our lost friends are around us. The person who wakes us is a familiar face. It's Adewale.
Captain Kenway!
Adewale had left the island with the observatory on it to keep the jackdaw in one piece and said that when Edward's heart is ready, he needs to visit the assassins. So, after some reflection, we do. When we reach the island of the assassins, we see that it is still recovering from the damage that Edward did a few years ago, and this makes Edward realise the error of his ways. We meet with the leader of the assassins and question his morals, showing Edward's maturity. We reunite with Anne and ask her how she is doing and reminisce on the old days in Nassau with everyone there.
I miss them so. Rough as they were. Do you fear that too? All empty inside?
I do.
Again, we fast forward to the year 1721. It turns out Anne is the new quartermaster of the Jackdaw, and we are sailing to Jamaica to head back to Kingston to assassinate Mr. Rogers at his leaving party. To do this, we meet with someone with the deepest voice I think I've ever heard.
Captain Kenway.
And get a disguise to get us into the leaving party. We blend in, and when we see Rogers alone, we attack. We confront him about how he would have actually used the observatory, and Edward also says that he needs to find the sage to get it back, this time not to sell it, but to return it and make sure no one can use it anymore. This actually makes Rogers tell us about his whereabouts, and we can go and attack him.
I'm taking it back. And if you tell me where he is, I'll stop the man.
Here at the edge of a blade, I find a friend in you at last.
We destroy on board his ship, and when the sage is on his deathbed, he seems okay with dying and asks Edward if he has found the peace that he is seeking. He then speaks of a woman who was entombed and whom he had hoped to see again, which clearly confuses Edward.
Talk sense, man.
He's actually talking about the creator of the observatory and the sage's wife in previous lives. Before the sage dies, he asks for his body to be destroyed as he knew the Templars would use it in some way. Edward has a suspicion as to where Torres has gone and heads back to the observatory. When inside, we see Torres' guards have swarmed the place, and it looks like the security measures have kicked in, and we now need to make our way around without getting singed to dust. Eventually we get to Torres and finish him off once and for all, but this is also when Torres raises quite a good point about Edward's losses.
You have no family anymore, no friends, no future. Your losses are far greater than ours.
That may be, but killing you rights a far greater wrong than ever I did.
But Edward is happy knowing that the observatory is in the right hands, and after this is when Edward is handed a letter in response to one he had sent back home in Kingston, and we can see that this really shocks him. But before we find out, we come back to the real world, where the person who was talking to us in our ear is in our room, and his face looks very familiar, almost like the sage's. He tells us that his wife Juno, was almost reborn in our body, and that she was part of a race that created us and we are just tools to them. Not very kind. He injects us with something, and then the room is swarmed by armed security, and the Sage is killed again. We wake up in our boss's office, and for an apology for what happened, she shows us the trailer for the pirate experience that they have been creating based off our research.
In a world where pirates rule the waves.
Okay, you get the point. We head back to our pod and are now back in Great Inagor. Edward is leaving to return to England and says goodbye to his remaining friends. A boat arrives in the dock.
You're a good man, Edward. And if you learn to keep settled in one place for more than a week, you'll make a fine father too.
And before Edward leaves, he looks over at one of the tables and sees his lost friends sitting and enjoying a drink together one last time. A truly heartbreaking scene to watch. Edward picks a flower before arriving on the boat and greets his daughter, who is a few years old now, showing how long Edward has been away. They both sail off back home, leading to a bittersweet end to Edward's story and the best Assassin's Creed game. Fucking